Hey everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy and welcome to a little discussion with Lawrence Pasternack. How you doing today, Lawrence?
It's my answer.
That's your answer, okay. All right, let me make sure I got everything going right.
On what page is this? I'm trying to find it.
Should be on my page. All right, let's see. Hopefully some people will join in a second. They probably think I'm on the motorcycle. Usually this time of day, if I go live, I'm on the motorcycle. Anybody who joins in, please share this video.
I can't find it.
Hmm.
Oh, there we are. I got it.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. All right.
We got 4 people. Hello.
Hey, there we go. We got a few people joining in. It's not telling me who, but it is giving me a count. So if you want to say hi, please say hi. If you're interested in joining the conversation, I'm okay with that. Lawrence, you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. There is the link in the comments for anybody who wants to join the conversation. Hold on a second. Okay. I enabled the waiting room. So when you come in, you'll come into the waiting room and I'll just have to click over and we'll change the screen. We'll get more seats at the table and we'll pull up a chair for everybody. All right.
Hello,
So,
Shayna.
hey, Shayna. So, yeah, she's on the other side of the room. So I'm getting that twice. She needs to stop it. Anyway, so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live was because I heard about what DC was doing on his page, what he was talking about, but he has me blocked. So I can't see the post. Of course, obviously I've seen it. We all have a way to get around. So I've seen it and it's got me pretty riled up because we saw this same tactic 2 years ago. And because of that tactic, because of people like him, we have continued to see 4,000 to 6,000 people a year arrested for simple possession and then put in the system, which can lead to all kinds of things. I know it's just supposed to be a ticket and the cite and release. We talked about this last night, but we also know that's not how it's being used. So we've got to stop that. We've got to stop the thousands of people who have had their probation and parole revoked because of dirty tests or forgetting a card. Do you remember not long ago, Lawrence? It may have been last summer, seeing that letter put out by the Department of Corrections, basically telling all probation and parole officers to ignore the card.
Yeah. And I've been contacted by people who were going back to jail because they got a patient card. And, we need to stop it.
And while that's going on,
806, 807 would have stopped it. And 820 will stop it. 819 will stop it. 818 will stop it. But one way or another, we need to stop it.
Okay, let's address that. 818 will stop it in the long term, but in the short term, you'll still get thrown in the system. Right? We talked about this the other night. 818 allows for you to, if you get arrested, to have a certain amount of time to get a card and to then get that expunged.
So
right,
we're talking about a few different things. One is if you're on a parole or probation, all three, 818, 819, and 820, all say that you can't lose your parole or probation. All right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Right. So in addition to that, there's the issue of, well, all that 818 does is basically expand our medical program, but it's still a medical program, 818. And so if you don't have a card, if 818 is the only one of the three that pass, if you don't have a card, what 818 does is it says, if you get arrested for cannabis, you have 45 days to get a card. You can get the card, bring it to the court, and then you get your charges dropped. So you'll still have a record that you were charged, but the charges will be dropped.
And you'll be out a lot of money at that point. Not just the card money. You'll be out bond, you'll be out court costs, you'll be out money. They will find a way to charge you.
But potentially
the bond.
Potentially, it depends on the jurisdiction. It's supposed to be only a cite and release.
And if every jurisdiction in Oklahoma would follow it the way you wrote that part, the way you covered that, then I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry. But we have to be realistic. And a simple breakdown of the race variation in the arrests can show that there's more going on here possibly than just the cannabis issue. So because look, I just want to say, because of things like that, I'm concerned 818 isn't enough. Also, 818 doesn't do anything to save the mom and pop shops as far as extending your customer base.
That's not quite the case. 818 allows anybody to get a card. You don't have to be an Oklahoma citizen. You can get a patient card from anywhere. So
yeah, but what I mean is, it doesn't allow, you still have to have a card to get in the door or to purchase. Right. It doesn't allow for everybody driving down the street to stop at your store, which I believe, and we've been saying this since we first learned about 806 that summer of 2019, that's the only way we save the majority of these stores, is if they can sell to everybody driving down the street. And so I just think 818 doesn't do enough. It doesn't do the heavy lifting that I think needs to be done, whereas 819 does. And it stops the arrest completely. It makes it more normalizes cannabis because everybody can have it, which I think will contribute to also lowering the number of people who are harassed. Excuse me. And 820 does most of the same stuff, right? Explain the difference between 819 and 820 as far as individual liberties, because I know 819 is a little better. I get that. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, 819, first of all, 819 is constitutional, 818 is statutory. But 819 is a law, basically just about the only thing that 819 is a laundry list of our rights, what rights we ought to have. So 819 basically says you can't be charged with a DUI for mere metabolites. You can't be charged with a DUI solely on the basis of active THC. Doctors cannot deny you treatment. Doctors cannot deny people in pain management treatment. You can't lose your kids. You can't be charged with child neglect merely for cannabis. It protects people from police search. It protects people from police detaining you merely for cannabis. It protects people from losing their jobs or being denied jobs for off-work cannabis use. It basically goes over all the ways in which prohibition has negatively affected people, and it establishes in the constitutions rights to protect cannabis use with regards to all the legacy issues that cannabis users have faced. So in that way, 819, I think, is vastly better than 820.
Okay, so let's make that very clear. We both agree 819 would be the amazing. It'd be the goal we need. It would be the best
legalization program in the world.
Right. And I support it fully. For those who don't think I do, I fully support 819. I'm looking forward to signing it. Okay. I've told everybody sign 819 and 820 because I'm concerned that Orca may not be able to get the signatures. And if they don't, we need a backup plan. And even if they do get the signatures, which would be great, I hope that happens, and they get on the ballot for this November. And again, I hope that happens. I don't see how, but I hope it does. Then I'm going to vote for both of them. And as you've stated, 819 supersedes 820 because it's constitutional. So would that not be the best of both worlds? Because what's in 820 that's not, we know what's in 819 that's not in 820. Not only is it constitutional, but it has job protections and DUI protections and better protections out in the world. I get that.
820 maybe has three things in it that I could think of that 819 doesn't, that are good for people. One is that 820 has expungement. 819 was supposed to, but the Supreme Court struck it. So 820 is our only path to getting criminal charges expunged. And so we have close to 100,000 people with cannabis criminal charges in Oklahoma and want to be able to restore their liberty. And so 820 is the only one that does that. 820 also reduces the fine for public consumption in places where tobacco can't be consumed to $25. So right now it's a $100 fine if you're smoking cannabis in a place where you're not allowed to, like where tobacco can't be smoked either. The fine right now is $100. 820 reduces that to $25. And what was the other?
Expunge records, did you say that?
Yeah, expunge records. The $25, it'll come to me what the other thing is in 820.
Okay,
but it just slipped
but
my mind.
let's start with the expunges records. Okay. 819, because the state Supreme Court made that split, okay, because they took that out. 819 does not do anything for expungements.
Yeah.
Okay. 820 still has expungements in there, right? Okay. So we need both of them, right?
Right. So that if the only way to get expungement is 820, we need both. And if both pass, 819 supersedes everything in 820 with regards to possession rights and so on and so forth.
But the parts of 820 that aren't in 819, the parts we really feel like we need, those would still be enacted, right?
Yes.
So we can get the full access of 819 with the expungements of 820 if we can get them both through, which was, as you've stated, the original intent of 820 to have those expungements in there.
Of 819, right? The expungements in there.
Right. Yes. And so in common sense thinking here, it seems like we need 819 and 820 to pass for the best possible world here in Oklahoma.
That's my view, right? My view is that I want if 819 kept the expungement, maybe 819 is all we need. But because they took the expungement out of 819, then for the sake of another 100,000 Oklahomans, I feel like we need both.
Okay, let's address what Jackie asks here. Why did they remove expungement from 819, but it's okay in 820?
Basically the reason why is, and to some extent this is my fault. I worked with an attorney on the language for the expungement section for 819. I didn't do it on my own. I'm not an attorney, but I had an attorney help write that. And what it does basically is the language was that anybody who files to get their criminal charges for cannabis expunged, the presumption is that they're eligible. So there's a presumption to the benefit of the applicant. What we didn't include was a sentence to allow the state to rebut. And so the point is that because it's only a presumption of eligibility, we assumed that the state still could rebut. We're not saying they can't. But the Supreme Court, and we think the Supreme Court was not doing this fairly, but the Supreme Court basically said, unless you explicitly say that the state can challenge an expungement petition, we are deviating from standard legal practices. And we did not make that clear in the gist for the petition. I think that's shenanigans. I think that there was another thing going on that made them want to say that. But nevertheless, that's the reason why the Supreme Court severed the expungement section, because we didn't include a sentence that says the state may rebut.
Okay, so and 820 has that rebuttal process?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe they know what they're doing. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Sorry. Came to me. Maybe they actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're cannabis law experts.
Right.
We're amateurs.
Right. Okay. So look, I don't want to make this video just a personal attack on DC.
Let me answer Bryce's question that just came up. Bryce just says, what ability, if any, does the Capitol have to make changes to the proposed legislation if it is passed?
Great
Okay,
question.
so one thing we did we built into both 819 and 820 the power for the legislature to make certain changes. So we went through 819 and 820 and we said, what are all the things that we want to be absolutely set in stone? What are the things that we realize could change over time? And so we gave power to the legislature to do things like change the allocations of monies that are collected, where they're going to go, what funds, and so on. So we set it up so that things like your basic rights are set in stone, but the fiscal side of it is more variable based on the legislature. That's for 818 and 819.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I kind of need to. I'm just finding so much hypocrisy here. Not in you, okay, not in you, but in what I'm seeing in the community with this particular issue. Well, go ahead. Let me see if I can figure out how to word it. You go ahead and finish what you were saying. I'll get to it in a second.
Yeah. So the last part of Bryce's question and answer is, by contrast, 820, because it's statutory, the lawmakers could do anything they want. They could repeal it, right? They could basically, the day after it passes, go into special session and cancel it. They could do that, right? They could change anything they want, just like they could change anything they want with 788. And so that's obviously a reason why 819 is so important, because it sets our rights into the Constitution. My perspective, though, my presumption is that our lawmakers aren't going to stop legalization 21 and older, right? They're not gonna repeal that part of 820. And they're not going to they're not going to repeal the expungement either. My guess is, my hope is, maybe I'm wrong, but that those two criminal justice issues are not their concern. The concern of our lawmakers, like obviously there are anti-cannabis lawmakers, but overall, they have only expanded patient access from 788. Like, for instance, they've allowed us to keep our entire home grow harvest, and they've added in other things, like I think we didn't have ointments technically legalized; those are now legalized. So when it comes to patient protections, I don't think our lawmakers are going to be challenging those. What they want to do is basically have their boot on business, right? Their focus in the past couple legislative sessions have been trying to make more money out of business, trying to set more rules up for business, trying to restrict business. That's where they're playing their games. And they could play those games across the board with 818, 819, and 820. 818, oh, here's the other good thing that 820 has that I forgot to mention. 820, like 818, returns the licensing fees for businesses to $2,500, because we now have this tiered licensing. 820 would repeal that, but our lawmakers would probably just come back if 820 passes and go back to the tiered licensing next session again. 818 is the only one that would stop that.
Okay. The reason I interrupted you earlier and mentioned the hypocrisy, it's because I understand that the lawmakers are only given control in where the money is allocated. Okay. But I'm thinking of all these people that are pushing the ORCA petitions right now, screaming about the legislators stealing all the money and where's all the money, and let's do an audit and where's all the money, but let's give them control of the money on a constitutional amendment. The strategy never made sense to me. I've heard it. I get it. It doesn't work for me. But again, I support 819 and 820. Let's make that very clear.
Yeah, my view is that things change over time. And if they're in the Constitution, you're kind of stuck with them. And so, if you say 3% of the dollars goes to a certain kind of need, like for instance, one of the things that I asked for in allocations was that a certain percentage goes to what's called the Home Waivered Services Program for families with developmentally disabled children. That was my ask for where the monies could go. Mm-hmm. And so let's say hypothetically, that gets much better funded by the state. And the state is covering that so well, we don't necessarily need that coming out of cannabis dollars. And there's another thing that, it might be needed for those cannabis dollars, might be needed for something else. That's the kind of thing that I think it's reasonable for the legislature to make changes on. But what I don't want to see changed is our legal protections as individuals.
Bryce, yeah, that we've been talking about that. 4 to 6,000 people a year in Oklahoma are still being arrested, and that doesn't count, as we talked about earlier, um, those who have probation and parole revoked. And last summer, the Department of Corrections sent a letter to all their offices saying, we don't give a damn about the card. Proceed as if it's still illegal.
Now, let me
And
interject on this. Let me interject. The 2018 US Federal Farm Bill, the 2018 Federal Farm Bill, Section 12619, revises the Controlled Substances Act to remove THC from Schedule 1 when it comes out of hemp. So according to federal law, THC is no longer a controlled substance so long as it's derived from hemp. That means that if you test positive for THC, it doesn't entail you're violating federal law. Now, this is something, if you're on parole or probation, you might want to talk to your parole officer over. If you're using a Delta 8 THC or a Delta 9 THC that's hemp derived, you're not violating federal law. And if that's the case, why would they revoke your parole?
I say the only way it stops is when one of these people who are having their probation and parole revoked can afford to sue the state. I don't see it stopping. I mean, we're talking about people who can't fight back.
That's right. That's right.
They're not in a position to fight back.
Yep.
I mean, I'm hearing from people who it starts off as a possession. They have to pay the $400 to go home that day in small town Oklahoma. And then they have to go back to court and pay all these fines and get on a year probation where they're drug tested for a year. And if they fail the drug test, they're headed back to jail. The state has found a way to not stop arresting people and using cannabis against all of us. And that card is a con to think that it's going to always get you out of the situation. It's going to get you out of the situation where the cop doesn't want to violate your civil rights. Sure. But we're in Oklahoma.
People need to understand this. If you don't have a patient card and a police officer finds you with cannabis, in a lot of instances, it's not just a cite and release $400 ticket. You get arrested, you get processed, you got to pay the $400 fine, you got to go back to court. You go back to court and you have hundreds of dollars of court fees you got to pay. Revolving fund for this and for that and so on and so forth. And then the judge puts you on a suspended sentence for 2 years or 3 years, during which time you're not going to be allowed to use cannabis. You're going to have to do weekly urine tests or biweekly urine tests, and you're going to have to go to drug therapy counseling. That's where things are right now, especially in the rural counties. If you don't have a patient card, you're looking at not being allowed to use cannabis for years if you get arrested.
Yeah,
and thousands of dollars of cost.
Lawrence, I'd like you to throw in what you know about the mothers who are being prosecuted as well.
And, 788 protects parents from neglect and endangerment. And so presumably that should carry over to pregnancy as well. But it's not being treated that way. And so the government is charging women with child endangerment who are using cannabis while they're pregnant. And for some women, that's what they use to control their nausea. And when it comes to whether or not cannabis causes birth defects, whether or not it causes harm to the fetus, the jury's out. Scientifically speaking, it's unknown. What I would say is better safe than sorry. Only use cannabis when pregnant if you absolutely have a clear medical need for it and your doctor concurs. But nevertheless, we don't want the government playing doctor. And that's what they are. I could bring up the Tulsa shooting and ask the extent to which our current position, where the government basically is tying the hands of doctors, not letting them treat pain properly, the extent to which that might have played a role in this Tulsa shooting. Terrible event, terribly unjust, not the right thing to do. But still, if your doctor is saying, I can't prescribe you any more pain medicine, the government won't let me. We don't want the government controlling our lives.
And that's what they're doing, especially in this situation with the pain doctors. So I look forward to, if it ever comes out, the full details about what was going on between that patient and his doctor. Again, like Lawrence said, absolutely no justification for anything remotely like this. Saying that, let me also say, after 8 spinal surgeries, I've been in so much pain, I considered taking my own life. They had me on 9,855 pills a year, and I was still in constant pain. And that was after 3 surgeries. I've had 5 more since then. I now have a pain stimulator implant. So I understand how, and you do too, how pain will push you in ways most people don't even understand. But again, what this person did was sick, to say the least.
And it's not the only instance, by the way. There have been a number of instances like this around the country where a pain management patient just snaps and kills his doctor, right? He gets to a point where, he's just can't handle it anymore. And, there are lots of patient suicides, but there are times where he's killed his doctor. There are times also where patients have killed themselves, and then the family members sue the doctor for failing to provide proper medical care, providing, ongoing pain management, and have won those suits.
And while we have now 22 people watching, I'd like to say, this is in my opinion, this opioid problem we're bringing up is the fault of a particular lobbyist at the Capitol that is doing everything, in my opinion, to try and get rid of opioids in Oklahoma, which isn't medically sound, in my opinion. Of course, it's just my opinion, but they have a place. So I think things are only going to get worse. And I bet that person, he uses this to say, to make it even harder. I bet he says, I bet they spin it to imply somehow the opioids made him do it. If he was even on opioids, I don't know. I know St. Francis is one of those places that, from what I've been told by many people, that will not give you medicine after surgery if you have a card. I don't know if this person had a card. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I know St. Francis has a no tolerance, we will cut you off, we don't care about your pain policy. And so I really look forward to possibly, if we can, figure out what was going on between that doctor and that person, and how the state might have had a hand in causing this terrible situation.
The doctors are in just this most ridiculously terrible situation. Pain management doctors. If you are prescribing to a point that's really addressing patient needs, then if something goes wrong with that patient, you're charged with murder. If you don't prescribe adequate to that patient's needs, the patient, in this case of the Tulsa individual, kills the doctor, or the patient kills themselves and the doctor's sued. And this is the consequence of when the government gets in the way of the physician-patient relationship. This is all flowing out. The opioid crisis is not a prescription opioid crisis. In a sense, it maybe kind of started out that way, but it's an illicit fentanyl crisis. And it's an illicit fentanyl crisis because there are people who can't get the medicine they need to address their pain that go to the black market. They don't know what they're buying. They buy something that they think is oxycodone and it turns out to be fentanyl, and they die. This is all the result of our government. This is all the result of our government not making good decisions about the healthcare needs of the people because they're not the doctors. I'll be back in just a second.
All right, I'll chat while you're gone. I hear your doorbell. I'm guessing the dog is back. All right. Well, to bring this back to the petitions, and I'll say this why Lawrence isn't on here so he doesn't burn with me. The crap DC is doing, trying to talk trash on 820 because he thinks that because he doesn't like where the money's coming from that's going to help gather the signatures. That's crap. That's selfish. That shit needs to stop. This is just ridiculous. And please, everybody, tag him and tell him I said this. He's happy to join us. I have put the link in the comments. If anybody wants to join, I will do it again right now. And if anybody wants to join, feel free to join and tell DC I'm calling him out for his crap. This is ridiculous. He wants to continue to allow people's lives to be destroyed because of his damn ego, because he wants popularity on Facebook. He wants to feel like some sort of warrior. His pitchfork pothead group has caused more problems than any organized group I've seen in this state. They have turned more people at the Capitol against cannabis than any other group. So DC has a business to run. I get that. Currently, I hope the damn thing closes down. I really do. No, I do. This guy lied about us. He knowingly lied about us constantly for 6 months. Let's be real. Durbin made a deal with Fetgetter. If they would find a way to kill 806, then they would run whatever bills they wanted. And that's exactly what happened. But of course, none of them passed. But that's exactly what happened. And DC jumped on those lies while messaging with us. I was messaging with DC when all this rolled out. He knew I was not getting paid. He knew we were not getting paid. And he continued to say that crap. He continued to spin the lies. This is ridiculous. He's doing it again. He has no justification for this. His arguments are weak at best. Go ahead.
Let me repeat. 819 would be the best full access program in the country. 819 is, a dream. I absolutely would hope it passes. I was, very involved in its drafting. It matters a lot to me. But 820 is not bad. It's not black and white. It's not good and evil. 819 is better. 818 is your kind of, just toe over the line, most minimal kind of legalization. But still, what that means is nobody gets arrested and people get their criminal records expunged. And those are huge things for real people. And all of this ultimately for me, I'm not in the business. I don't like getting high. I'm doing this because I want to end the government's war against its own citizens. And so 818, 819, and 820 all are progress in that war against government intrusion into our lives.
Well, let me repeat, so DC doesn't come on here and say I'm getting paid by the 820 people. I'm not getting paid by anybody, and I am looking forward to signing 819 and voting for it when it gets on the ballot. I've also already signed 820, and I look forward to voting for it when it gets on the ballot, because I want to end the same things you want to end. I want to end the prosecution of people for no reason other than making a different choice. And this state is turning into a theocracy. It really is. And I know some people think I'm crazy, and I'm seeing I'm arguing with people online constantly, trying to get them to see what's going on. And all they want to do is deflect and point at Biden. Well, let's bring all this home. Let's do something we can do in Oklahoma. Let's vote. Let's sign and vote for all these. Let's do something instead of just whining and saying it's my way or no way. DC is being extremely selfish again. And I'm not going to be quiet about the fact that he lied for more than 6 months. And when I've confronted him about that, and we've talked about that since then, all he wants to do is say, well, that was yesterday, let's move forward. He doesn't even want to acknowledge what a shit show he caused. He does not, none of these people want to acknowledge what they did. And so now he's on his page, which is his page to do whatever he wants, talking smack about 820 instead of doing something to help improve this state. He's not an activist, or if he is, he's an activist for himself and for nobody else. He does not care about anybody else. He talked a good game, and that's it. And I'm sick of it. So come at me, everybody. Come at me.
I don't want there to be a fight between activists. What I want to do is I just want everybody to be honest. and to keep the focus upon the fact that we're all working to try to better the lives of people, fix problems that have been around for generations. We're trying to give people legal access to things that they should never have been denied access to. And if 819 fails at the ballot, maybe 820 won't. I want them all on the ballot. And I understand the worry is that people say, well, 820 is getting funded. Why should we even bother with 819? The reason why we should bother with 819 is 819 is better than 820. Get 819 on the ballot. But 820 is a backup, and it shouldn't be attacked or rejected because of the fact that it's just being paid for by philanthropists. They've funded more than a dozen legalization campaigns around the country. If not for New Approach, we would not be where we are in this country now. They're responsible for 12 of the 19 states that have full access.
I thought weed was created right here in Oklahoma. Sorry, I can't help it. It just seems like we invented it here. We're better at it than everybody, and we invented it here. And so we have to, even if it means cutting off our own nose, we have to do it our way. There's no other way to do it.
Grassroots is a great thing, right? The people having power is a great thing. All that stuff is great. It doesn't mean that funded from, liberal millionaires and billionaires is a bad thing, right? If the goal is to stop people from going to jail, to get people out of jail, to give people legal protection, if that's the goal, then all these petitions are furthering that goal.
Isaac, I agree. And I don't want this big fight, but like you just said, Lawrence, you want everybody to be honest. DC has never been an honest broker in this game. Never. And he took his cues from a lawyer who is a lawyer. When did lawyers start wearing Superman capes? So, he's learned well. He's good at his spin. His comment about, I have a whole campaign, or we the Pitchfork Potheads have a whole campaign to go after 820 is offensive to me. It's offensive to the people who are still in jail. It's offensive to the people who have to go past the dispensary because they can't go in and get what they need because their job or whatever the case may be, they can't get a card. Okay?
Matthew Campbell's asking, what are the shortfalls of all three? So there are lots of moving parts in 818, right? It restructures OMA and it puts hemp and cannabis together. It creates I honestly don't remember all the details because there's so much in it, and I wasn't involved in a lot of the business related details there. But I think there might be a worry with 818 that there's too much in there for a constitutional amendment. And I don't want to say this is a big problem or that is a big problem because I just can't go through all the details, but there's a lot of moving parts. So one of the things that it does is it puts into the Constitution no qualifying conditions for a medical program. And if we have full access, I'm not sure we need that. I worry that if part of the idea here is to have a separation between medical and full, then I don't know what the medical program should look like if we had full access. I want flexibility, but I'm worried about things going into the Constitution that we might regret later. And that worry is sort of just a generic one for 818. For 819, it doesn't have expungement because the law enforcement, because the Supreme Court took it away. For 819, there's some, bits of language in there in the allocations of dollars that I'm not happy about. But overall, I don't see any major problems with 819. With 820, one of the things in 820 that I don't like is that it does give local governments power to shape the business hours for the full access dispensaries. Now, it can't do it in a way that's unduly burdensome.
No,
So
wait,
that
hold on,
means that they
hold on.
can't-
And let me emphasize, please, that it also can't do it to medical sales.
Yeah. So, right. So so 820, it allows a local government to say you're only allowed to sell the full access from say 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever. But it can't be unduly burdensome. They can't restrict it to just 3 hours. So maybe it's going to track with liquor stores. But I'm not. I don't think they had any need to put that in there. So that's probably my biggest qualm about 820. That it just was unnecessary to put that in there. You know, some people don't like the 15% tax. One way in which 819 and 820 are different is that 819 and 820 both have a 15% tax for full access. But what 819 does is it drops the medical tax to zero. So 820, if you are a card holder, you will be paying zero in excise tax. You'll still pay the sales tax, but zero in excise tax. 820 doesn't do anything about the medical program. It doesn't touch it in any way at all. 820 does add, though, that 15% tax for full access.
I will add, and let me add to that I believe after multiple conversations for a few years now with legislators, that after we bring in full access, they will be willing to sit down at the table and discuss lowering and eventually dropping the sales tax, all the tax on the cards, on the purchase with the card. They've always supported that, but they've always made it clear, not until we acknowledge what we have, which they consider full access, by just calling it full access and then do something to adjust the program. I don't know what that is. We need to figure that out. But then they would be willing to consider getting rid of the tax. And if we're thinking they'll never do it, we can't get them to work with us on anything, well, that throws right in the face of putting things in 818 and 819 that allow them to adjust the money. So it doesn't hold water with me. It's a false argument. The legislator's not going to do everything we want. We can find ways to work with them. It's
one thing I'm also hoping for that we did build into 819 is that if even before the federal government legalizes, the federal government might allow for interstate commerce. Like just like they had the Cole memo that protected the inside of states, maybe there will be a decision from the Department of Justice that will allow states that have legalized to transact with one another. And so we built in 819 that should there be a memo from the Department of Justice or in any other way, a federal allowance for interstate commerce, then the cannabis businesses here in Oklahoma could start legally exporting to other states.
I don't believe they'll even consider that unless they're getting a little money for it. They're not going to allow pot to cross state lines without them getting a cut.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think that this Department of Justice, right, under Garland, they might allow state to state transfer between contiguous states at least that have full access. It's a lobbying action, at the federal level. Maybe it'll happen. It won't require Congress.
Well, I think it'd be extreme. The chances of that are in my opinion, are slim, really, sure. Really slim. What's that?
Slim, sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth pursuing because just like we had the Cole memo, we might get something that could do that. So, Kansas, right? What if we were to be Oklahoma were the growers for Kansas? What if Oklahoma were the growers for Texas, right? We're way ahead in the game in the region. Yeah.
Well, this is another reason. This is another reason we need full access now, as soon as possible, by whatever means, so that these businesses, these grows will survive. So that when we get to a point where maybe we can grow for all the shops in Texas that for whatever reason it's too hot or whatever to grow, or like you said, Kansas, maybe they need some up there. But if we continue with this medical program, we're going to have to, and they will, narrow down the number of grows. And then we won't be in a position to supply the rest of the country like we all want to do.
So Tina says, if there are multiple ones on the ballot, could they all pass? Yes, they could all pass. So if 818, 819, and 820 all pass, 818 and 819 become part of the Constitution. 820 is statutory. All the rules in 819, because it'll be in the Constitution, will supersede those of 820. Like, for instance, 820 only allows for possession of up to 1 ounce without a card. 819 allows for possession of, on your person, 3 ounces and at home more. So if 820 and 819 pass, everybody will be allowed 3 ounces on their person, not just 1 ounce. 820 allows for unlimited home growth, by the way, just like 819, like we have now. You have 6 plants mature, 6 plants immature, and then whatever you harvest, you're allowed to keep at home. So 820 allows for unlimited possession at home from home grow. But for personal possession on your person, 819 allows for 3 ounces and 820 allows for only 1 ounce. If
That's on non-card holders. That's people who are not in the medical program.
Right. That's for non-card holders. And so 819 will supersede 820 because it's constitutional. William said, one of the huge benefits of 818 and 819, I'd rather they attempt to make the medical program the driver of standards instead of recreational. This hasn't been attempted before. Yeah, that's a very good point. And so 819 is basically taking our existing medical program and making it available for everyone 21 and older. 820 is just like, a rec program in many other states. The possession limits are smaller, but bear this in mind. Bear this in mind that 820 still offers progress that we don't even have right now in terms of patients, who are parolees under probation and so forth. Right now, they're going back to jail. And the other thing is that they're all pretty much silent on things like testing and labeling and all that kind of stuff. And so what's the bread and butter of a medical program? From my perspective, the essence of a medical program is to give people the details they need to make careful choices. That's, I think, what is integral to a medical program. That people who have serious medical needs can access the products that they want to address those needs in the most targeted way possible. But we still don't even have that, right? Because 2% terpenes means nothing. I want to see on the label, 1.2% limonene, 2.1% pinene, etc. Until we have that, I don't see us as having what we ought to have for a medical program. So we're not still, right, in that full sense, what we need for medical program, whereas many rec states have that labeling. Many rec states have the detailed labeling of terpenes that we still don't.
Let me ask you a question to address not something somebody's asked here, but something I've been asked in the past. Does 820, a lot of people think it's going to be like Arkansas, where people without a card will only be able to buy 100 milligram edible. Does it do anything like that, or is it?
None of them, right? None of them restrict milligrams. No, none of them do.
I didn't think they did. I just wanted everybody to hear that they don't.
Right.
I think it was John Kumis who was asking about that once a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and let's say 819 passes. If 819 passes, our lawmakers could still come in and restrict milligrams. There's nothing to stop them from placing that restriction. None of the petitions stop our lawmakers from introducing a whole bunch of other rules that are just, those petitions are silent on. So, maybe a medical patient could get, a gummy that's 2,000 milligrams. But if you don't have a card, maybe the maximum milligrams without a card might be 10 milligrams. None of the petitions speak to this.
Well, like in Arkansas and some other states, I think it's a 100 milligram package. Yeah. But you can buy more than one. So it just makes more money for the companies, in my opinion, when you limit milligrams, because nobody's going to take less. They're just going to buy more packages.
Well, here's the simple solution. You just buy isolate, right? It's like, I don't understand why people spend all this money on edibles. It's like such the hugest waste of money. You can buy a gram of THC isolate for $10, right? You know
Okay.
that, right? That's 200.
Tell them more. They need to know this,
milligrams.
Lawrence. Tell them what you do.
You can buy some hemp oil or MCT oil from Amazon, right? From supermarket. Doesn't cost you much. You can get like a gallon of MCT oil or hemp oil, and you just basically get one of those little mini scales, and you choose however many milligrams you want of your THC or your CBD, whatever. You dilute it into your hemp, and then you put it in gel caps. And with just the most simple math, you can sit down and make yourself 100 gel caps, 100 edibles for $1. People are spending ridiculous sums on these edibles, like, a package of $30 for 15 edibles. It's crazy. You could get all of that for 5 cents.
Oh, I love it when you get irate. Earlier, you guys missed it earlier before we were live. He used some foul language. He said bull crap. Well, he was mad. Oh, he was mad. I couldn't help but laugh. All right. So let's see. We got any more questions yet? Again, if anybody wants to join us and talk about this, feel free to click on the link. I will put it in the comments again. If somebody wants to tag DC, if he's not watching, or maybe if he's watching and he wants to join in, please come on in. We'll bring up another chair. We can change screens. We'll have another chair at the table, and you can explain to me your asinine post, please.
I don't like the fighting.
I understand that, Lawrence, but if we continue to sit and do nothing and fight back, then he does exactly what he did last time. That's the problem. I lost my shit a few times, but for the most part, we didn't want to get online and get this personal. But he's never stopped. And now he's doing it again.
If we get people to understand that 820 is not evil, that basically just about the only thing that 820 does is it says everyone 21 and older can buy cannabis, and if you have a criminal record, you can get it expunged. That's basically it. There are a few things, like I said, giving jurisdictions, which technically they already have, right, the right to set hours of operation. I'm not thrilled by that. That's probably the only thing I think in 820 that I'd say I don't like.
But again, I don't want everybody running around saying that they're going to close all the doors because, after sundown or whatever, because this doesn't do anything to medical sales.
Yes. And right, 820 also says that in no way can this be used to shut down businesses. It can't be used, right, to stop. All that it could do is say, if you want to pass an ordinance that this business could only be open 10 to 10 or whatever. But it can't be used to shut down businesses, and it can't be unduly burdensome. But I just don't think they even should have bothered with that language, because it's sort of implied already that local jurisdictions could do it. So, what is 820 other than basically, like I call it, a toe over the line full access program? It's not as bold, it's not as ambitious, it's not as amazing as 819, but it's not bad. And so my concern is that we don't want to diminish the energy behind 819, but we also don't want dishonesty with regards to 820. And one way or another, we don't know what the fate of 819 is going to be, and 820 might be the backup. It's a conservative backup in comparison to the boldness of 819.
Well, I understand not wanting any fighting, but I demand that he justify and explain things like how 820 kills 420, which is what he's posting. So if that's the case, let's hear how, because otherwise it's just another one of his bumper stickers meant to distract and bring a little business to his store.
Yeah, what he said was 820 kills 420 because if 820 passes, our lawmakers are going to come along and stop 820 from getting enacted. And it's like, I doubt it. And that's not, it's not the problem with 820 so much. It's a possibility, I agree, but I think it's extremely unlikely. If we were the very first state in the country, that would be a worry. But we would be the 20th to have full access if this passes. And there are a few states that might also legalize in November as well. So we might be the 24th. And at that point, is the governor going to override? He doesn't have veto power over an initiative petition. It would require our lawmakers, right, basically to go in and enact legislation that kills 820.
Our lawmakers, who the overwhelming majority will tell you if you talk to them, they're okay with full access. They just can't get it done through the Capitol. So they're counting on the people to pass full access to help bring in more money.
And to quote unquote take the lipstick off the pig. Because from their perspective, 780 is nothing but.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, if 820 passes, it gives them what they need, but it also gives them cover. It gives them the full access program they can draw more money from, but it gives them cover in saying, we didn't do this, the people did this.
And
they want it, but they want it. That's why Fetgetter had a bill, has had a bill for 2 years now to do this, and just, they won't do it because they don't want to put their name on it.
And it wasn't, Fetgetter didn't even have a bill. It was basically just, a resolution for an initiative petition.
Okay.
And so, we're talking about $300-500 million in taxes from full access. That's, significant for a state like Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about trying to bring power to the cannabis industry, if the cannabis industry is generating $300 million in tax revenue, that's power.
Yeah, I saw one person saying that it was the cannabis industry that put the $1 billion in savings that the state has. That's just so not true. We may have done $1 billion in sales,
right?
But that didn't put $1 billion in savings for the state. That's not what happened. We're even remotely close.
We're talking in the tens of millions of dollars, right, of net revenue coming out of our program right now.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's great. I just got another message from a dispensary who I mistakenly at the beginning of this program gave my phone number to before I went, why the hell do you need my number to every store, whoever asked for it? And I've unsubscribed to their text list a couple times now, but here we are 3 years later, and I still get the occasional text from Green Country Bud in Tulsa. It's just.
William Bradley says, I think it's 72 million based on the article I wrote. Yeah, I think that's probably right. It's in that ballpark, but that's the gross, not the net. I was just basically saying in terms of going into the state coffers, after all the expenses are paid for OMA, then it's probably about half that amount.
And the sheriffs get far too much in grants. Matthew, what are you talking about? Let me back up, see if I can figure that out.
Yeah, there's a bill. I don't remember the details, but there's a bill that basically uses OMA money to fund sheriff interdiction.
Okay, let me ask a question. Matthew, are you or Lawrence? What money is in 818 and 819 that goes to law enforcement?
818 and 819 both include law enforcement dollars, additional training for law enforcement, for mental health interactions. I think there's two different ones.
I only point that out because and understandably so, Matthew's mad about the sheriff's office getting too much money from the program. And these petitions are going to give even more money to them specifically.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. That was what I didn't like. That was, I think, where I kind of walked away from the table with helping with this particular with the Orca stuff, because I didn't like where the money was going, and I didn't like the political strategy, and I still don't. But again, I support 819. I look forward to signing it. I look forward to voting for it. If 818, 819, 820 get on the ballot, I'll probably vote yes on all of them, just see what happens. I mean, isn't that the best of all worlds? Isn't that what we should want? Is whatever it takes to stop the arrests, whatever it takes to end the oppression of people because of their choices, not who wrote the petition or what were their motives or what were their objectives. If I relied on the things DC is relying on to make his decision on what to support, I'd be out here doing everything I can to shit all over what Orca's trying to do. Instead, I am saying, get out there and sign them. I'm not working with the camp, but I'm saying I'm supporting them. I'm saying get out and sign them, and 820. Because that's how we stop abusing people for their choices. That's how we get the government to leave us alone, by being willing to set our differences aside and all come together on something, even if it's not perfect, to improve the state. In my opinion, 819 and 820 do a great job. I hope they both pass. I have issues with 818, but I'll sign it. I mean, I'm not going to work against it for sure. I also don't think it stands a snowball's chance in hell in passing.
What?
Because I don't think the people outside of the cannabis card holders or business owners are going to support putting anything about this program in the Constitution. If they're not getting full access out of it, I don't believe they're going to support it. And we're going to need a lot more people than the 400,000 card holders to get this to pass.
Well, not a lot.
Go ahead.
Not a lot. If all 400,000 card holders vote, all we'll need is about another 100,000 above that.
If the turnout is the same as the primaries.
Right.
Yes, more people voted for 788 than voted for the governor the race before that. So you put 3 cannabis petitions on the ballot, or 2 or 1. And I think the turnout goes way up for and against. And if it becomes a battle of medical versus recreational, I don't believe medical will win. I believe full access will win that battle, because other people want access too. And we have to stop being so selfish as to think this belongs to us. All right. Well, it looks like nobody wants to join in. That's okay. I get it. We got any more questions? Frank, you said something about joining in. Let's see that white beard you're bragging about. And that's pretty white, man. I don't know. I guess there's a little color on the sides, maybe. But it's pretty white.
Oh, another point of difference between 819 and 820 is that for 819, you only need 1 license. For 819, you get a license, it's medical and rec, no difference. For 820, you need both a medical and a rec license. I don't like that.
Okay. How much is the rec license?
It's the same, $2,500.
In the bill. Okay. In the bill, it's $2,500.
They're both, it's $2,500, right?
Okay. All right.
And there is a worry there. I think there is a legitimate worry that our lawmakers might come in and have a higher license fee than what's in 820. But the thing is, 819 doesn't even state a license fee. Right? 819 doesn't even state a license fee. So in theory, right, the legislature can come in and set whatever rates they want.
819,
818 does set the license.
819. Hell, hold on. 819 doesn't have a licensure fee, a price.
No. Because it's saying that, existing licenses are good for rec as well.
Okay. So it's just whatever the licensure is currently at that time.
819 is a civil rights bill, right? 819 is basically, here are all your legal protections. That's what 819 is. Which
is why I like it. Because it's about the right things that we're supposed to be concentrating on. All right. Let's see. What do we got here?
Can you hold it the same location? And Nicole says yes, right? Absolutely. That's the intent. That a dispensary could sell. The difference is just at the cash register, right? That's the idea basically behind both 819 and 820. That you go into the same store. If you have the card, you get a different tax rate than if you don't have a card. And from the standpoint of the customer, that's the only difference.
Yeah, Chance, on top of the $2,500 medical license. I will say, I think that those that don't want rec can just keep their medical business going. They don't have to go to rec. They don't have to sell to everybody. So the businesses that want to do this will come up with the 2,500 or more if it gets changed to access a broader market, a huge unlimited market, an actual free market.
Now, bear in mind also that if 819 passes, basically just about immediately we have full access. If 820 passes, there's still going to have to be rulemaking and so on that could delay things. And so one of the worries that Jed has raised concerning 820 is our lawmakers, even if they let 820 move forward, they could slow it down by extending the deadline for rulemaking. That's a possibilbility.
In a state that wants, hold on. All right, go ahead.
One of the things that 820 says that 819 doesn't say, 820 says that the rulemaking authority, right, can only pass additional rules regarding full access to satisfy statutory needs. So it's not as if the rulemaking authority can just do whatever the hell they want. But what it says is it has to be the exact same set of rules between medical and full access, except where there's an explicit statutory difference. And what's the statutory difference? 21 and older, without a card, or anybody else with a card. That's the only difference.
What I was going to add earlier was that, yes, the legislators could, as you stated, find a way to slow down 820 in a state that wants to put more money in the bank and improve their bottom line, where the legislators overwhelmingly will tell you they want full access. They just can't do it through the Capitol. So all the signs show that they will want to start collecting those taxes as soon as possible.
Yeah, and
meaning they will not get in the way of enacting 820. So
Chance says, can 820 sell licenses before they end the 2-year moratorium? So this is a Chance. I was going to bring this up. This is a worry that I have. The worry that I have is if a separate rec license is needed and there's a moratorium on licenses, how does rec happen?
The moratorium is on medical licensure.
That's true. The moratorium as it is. So it would require an act of legislature to put a moratorium on rec. But, that's, I think, one of Jed's worries. One of Jed's worries is that the lawmakers are going to basically slow play 820 if that's the only thing that passes. If 819 passes, then pretty much instantly every dispensary will be able to sell 21 older.
Okay. Well, I don't think they're going to want to put a moratorium on it while existing stores can get the
Chance is saying,
licensure. Hold on.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll put a moratorium on it. When they can collect, when the licensure will be available to existing stores. Okay, I don't think they'll want to. They may want a moratorium beyond any new stores. Well, 820 doesn't allow new stores for a length of period. During that period, all it's eligible is existing stores. Why would the legislators get in their way? They're already open. They want more tax money. That's how you get it without increasing the number of stores. Just an argument to have.
yes. So Chance says that the legislation says that the moratoriums on commercial licenses, right, not explicitly medical. And so that's a fair point, that if there's a moratorium on commercial licenses, and what 820 does is it says you need a separate license to sell rec, then the existing moratorium may carry over onto that. And that's a very, very fair worry about it.
Yeah, I understand the worry. I don't think it'll happen that way because, again, I think they are too anxious to collect that money. For that to happen, they would want to shut off the faucet. They never want to turn off the faucet. And if they can do it without allowing any more stores to open at the same time, they'll do it.
That's my guess. That's my guess.
Right. But I understand his concerns. I get that. And again, Chance, I'm not sure if you were here earlier. I want to make it clear to you while you're on here. I've shared at least one of your posts. I support 819. I'm not on here trashing Orca in any way. We're arguing the points. I am calling DC's shit out because that's what it is. Okay. His anti-820 stuff about how 820 will kill 420 is destructive and it does nothing to improve this community. But I support what you're doing with 819 and 818. Okay. So I'm not your enemy here. I just want to make that clear. Not that you've said that, but I just want you to know that while you're on here. I don't know how much you saw earlier.
I don't like manipulating. I don't like spin. I don't like using rhetoric. So I don't want to bash something because I like something else more.
Right. Which is what I'm doing. And not only that, as we've determined, we both agree the best thing we could hope for is 819. That'd be the best thing we'd hope for with 820 to get the people out of jail and clean up the records. That's the best we could hope for. I'm going to do everything in my power to make that happen. I think DC should be doing the same.
DC, does want expungement. He does want prison release. He's talked about that before. And the only game in town right now for that happening is 820.
Right. He has talked about that, which is why I'm so pissed about this. Because he should see that if that's his true goal, if that was ever a real goal, he should see that in 820. Instead of whatever he sees. I don't know what he sees. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Again, we were pissed they didn't listen to us. We were pissed the first time when they didn't listen to us. They never did it exactly how we wanted it. But our objectives have never changed. End the war on the people. That's our objective. That's what the OCLA is all about. We quietly work behind the scenes to try and fix opioid legislation and cannabis legislation in the sense that it affects the people. And I think that's what we're doing here. We're trying to help what affects the people. 819 and 820, I think, do a great job working together. It's unfortunate they weren't written together, but they weren't. But they can work together to give us what we all want, I believe.
Yeah, that's the way I think we should approach this as a community. Say 819 and 820 work together. We should support both. And if 819 doesn't pass and 820 does, that's good, and then we do what we can to expand our rights in the future. But I'm guessing that they're probably going to stand or fall together. I think that 820 will probably nudge out 819 because some people are afraid of putting it in the Constitution. But I think that there's going to be a spread of no more than 5% between the two. I could be wrong, but that's my guess.
And what do you think? And that'd be in the favorable side, both of them passing? Or
yeah, my guess is that it's going to be tight one way or the other. So it might be that both fail by a little bit. It might be that both pass by a little bit. It's hard to say because we have all the negative news cycle concerning the illegal grows and all that. But at the same time, there's, what do we have? We're 5 months away until the election, and the federal government, at least the Democrats have said that they're going to bring full access to the Senate floor. It's unlikely to pass. The Republicans are going to block it in all likelihood in the Senate. But still, that federal fight might help us get full access passed.
Okay. All right. Well, we've had some pretty good conversation here, I think. I understand a lot of people don't like to come on camera, so I understand you not jumping in. Please consider that in the future. I may go live again tonight after 9 o'clock, and it'll be a little different. I'll be wanting to also talk about some of the other stuff I've been posting that's rubbing so many people the wrong way. But as far as the petitions go, we of the OCLA support them all, correct?
I have worries about some of the moving parts in 818, but
in general,
the personal rights and protections in 818 are very, very important. They're the same ones as 819, except the ones in 818 are limited to cardholders.
Okay. And we will continue to speak positively about these things. And I will continue, so will Lawrence, to encourage people to sign all of these. That's the goal here.
One way or another, they're all about the people of Oklahoma and of the region having more improved, safer access, legally safer access, people not having to get the government's approval to be able to purchase cannabis like we have now. You got to pay the government to get your card. So, 819 and 820 are both basically saying the government can't stop us anymore. We can go off and buy cannabis. And, isn't this the aim of this movement?
I would do want a personal message here to Chance. Chance, I love that we're in agreement here. I really do. You and I have bumped heads a few times. It's unfortunate, but it happens. But I love that we're in agreement here. I wish that you would go talk to DC. Maybe you have a relationship with him. I don't know. But I just feel like he's doing the dirty work of Orca here. And Orca could, come out in support of all of them and clear that up. And I'm not calling Orca out. Again, I support these. I know how DC works. Okay. I know he didn't come up with all this on his own. And I want him to stop, because he will convince people of lies, and people will continue to go to jail because of those lies. So I would just ask anybody who knows him, please go see if you can talk some sense into him. We've had a reasonable conversation here. Lawrence and I don't agree on everything. Mostly right now, we don't agree on calling DC out. This is completely me. Okay. I want no backlash on Lawrence over this. Send it all my way. I'm happy to take it. But he needs to stop, because he's hurting people. And, a lot of people we know, at least myself, patients who have reached out to me for different reasons over the last 4 years. Some of them have died over the last couple of years, partly because of the shit show we have going on right now. And so I believe we need to come together, and we all need to do something to fix that and save these people, because they're us.
If 807 passed in November 2020 and then was enacted, February 2021, we're almost a year and a half from that. That's about 10,000 people, right, who would not have been criminally charged with cannabis. People who have spent that time in jail that would not have spent that time in jail. And, I never denied that there were all these moving parts in 806, 807, that you could worry about their consequences in the Constitution. Same thing with 818, right? You could worry about the consequences of tinkering with business issues and putting them in the Constitution. Completely agree. Well, one way or another, if the focus is on protecting people from the government screwing up their lives, then we're looking at about 10,000 people who would not have had their lives screwed up, and up to 10,000 people who maybe, however many people may not have been in jail if 807 had passed. People didn't want 807, but the reasons for not wanting it, I think, were so much based upon spin about, this idea that it's cannabis billionaires. That's bullshit. Sorry, I swore, there you go. It's not. It's left-wing ACLU attorneys and left-wing philanthropists like the Van American Foundation that deal with like access to HIV medication for poor people. That's what these people are doing, right? This is where the money's coming from. It's the helping people who have been, who are in economic straits get healthcare access. That's who's funding New Approach. With a little bit of money from industry, but we're talking about millions from the Van American Foundation. That's where the money's coming from.
As far as the little bit of industry money, I would just say that argument just doesn't hold water anymore, because we have so many out-of-state businesses that, or used to be out-of-state businesses, that are now centered right here in Oklahoma. And so, the people of this state sold this program to the highest bidder over the last 3 years. So they're here. If they want to put a little money towards expanding access to help, and their objective, unlike what Lawrence is explaining, the human right factor, even if their objective is just business, we need that money because we need to deal with the human factor, as Lawrence has just explained. In that particular instance, let's take all the damn business money is necessary to do the right thing. It shouldn't matter if a little bit of the money is from industry, if the goal is ending the war on people, as you state.
And we're new at this, right? We've been involved since 2017, right? We've been involved for about 5 years. The New Approach people have been involved for decades. They're responsible for almost every legalization around the country.
Yeah, same as what is that, marijuana policy project? They're also involved in 820, and they're also, we know one particular person who works with them, and he talks to me all the time about all the other states he's also working on.
Yep.
So
they're right. They're working not just on initiative petitions, but they're also working to overcome barriers in legislatures, right? It was the governor of Delaware who vetoed their full access bill just a few weeks ago. And so they're working to try to, get the legislature to override the governor's veto.
Wait, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. And this is a little off topic, but I do not want to forget this. Back to our person at the Capitol who pushes all these opioid things, and is, as anti-cannabis as you can be. He's the one who stopped us from getting cannabis legislation into opioid bills, so that the office managers at your doctor's office will actually read the new laws, rather than having to count on them to read marijuana laws, which they don't care about. They're reading opioid bills. So we've tried to get that in there, been fought by this particular person. I was told 2 weeks before session ended about him being mad about something to do with 888. Okay. And that was a really bad bill. He's so pissed about it. He's put together over $5 million into a fund to campaign against some of the people who got in the way of it. So he's going to continue to, we're talking big money here, people. We're talking the most powerful lobbyist in the Capitol. This person, everybody calls him the Don. It's not his name, but he's like a mafia Don. That's kind of how he's looked at. He doesn't care anything about cannabis, and he is, again, spending $5 million on some local races to get rid of some people he's pissed at. And he hates cannabis. So what's next? I just think our state is being run by people who don't care about our best interest, don't care about our freedom, and want to rule over us with an iron fist and a gun. But I'll get into that more tonight after 9 o'clock if everybody wants to come back for that one. That will probably piss a lot of people off. But I'll ask you guys again, come into these things. I've put the link in here 3 times. I'm glad you guys are watching. I want to see everybody's comments, but I'd love to see you come in here and talk to everybody. Not to us, to everybody, and tell everybody how you feel. Let us see your face and understand how you feel instead of just your words on paper, and including DC. Come on here, explain to us. I'll limit the screaming. Explain to us why what you're doing is a reasonable thing to do. And I'll accept that.
My guess is that his strategy is put down 820, make 820 a bad thing so that he wants to motivate the community behind 818 and 819. And
well, well, this is important. Okay, I'm sorry I keep interrupting. This is important. But all they're doing is making more enemies. Because, for example, there's a bunch of people out there right now collecting signatures for 820. And if these camps were getting along, they could be telling everybody, hey, look for the guys coming behind me soon with 818 and 819. Thank you for getting involved. They could be working together. They could be telling them, hey, when you're done signing this, go to your local dispensary and sign those other 2. And I know people that are working in the camp that would do this. But Jed has pissed off so many people with his challenge, and now DC with this. Why the hell would the 820 people give the time of day to the Orca people? You're making enemies for no reason with people who have lots of money and can get a lot more done than you. How about we make friends and ask for their help? Maybe next time, if 819 and 820 fail, maybe if we make friends with the people doing 820 and we need more after that, they help fund that because they see us as reasonable people who want to work together for a bigger goal than our own joint. Sorry, I interrupted you again. I had to rant.
You know, I helped arrange a number of meetings between Jed and Marijuana Policy Project and New Approach to try to find a path forward that, you know, is not adversarial. And I understand some of the reasons for Jed's court challenge against 820, but I wasn't happy with it. And I just think that, you know, eight New Approach and Marijuana Policy Project could have done more to help 818 and 819. And there was offers of help that got rescinded. And
yeah, are you guys aware of that? That there was offers of help? Everybody should be aware of that. The 820 camp did everything they could to bring the camps together. So,
you know, these things are kind of preliminary. Who knows how it would have played out? But still, they're, you know, I've spoken with, you know, the authors of 820. They don't dislike 819. They love it. They would love it to pass. They would love it to pass. Their position, though, is they just don't think that in terms of a political calculation, it has enough likelihood of passing. But they love what's in it.
that's exactly how I feel. But again, I'm going to sign and vote for everything because it's about ending the war. It's not about which camp wrote what. You know, there's a particular OG on here that I got into it with for quite a while. She's finally come around and said, you know, we called the truce. We're going to get along. But she was pushing back saying, these same things. It's just out of state people. And she did not care about the people still being arrested. Now she's seen the light, I think, and she does. There's hope here. We can come together.
We have Garrett commenting. Garrett, do you want to join us?
Well, I don't want to put him on the hook here. But if he would like to join us, that'd be great.
Most people don't know you, I think. I don't know if you want to be known.
Well, too late. They know him now.
Yeah.
He works with marijuana policy project.
Yeah, which is
As
a
well
national,
as-
right.
as well as National Normal and a bunch of other groups, and he works on legalization all over the country. Okay, he can't join us right now. Maybe later. Maybe tonight if you're up late. I'm going to go live again at 9. Of course, you might want to skip that one. He's a really nice guy and doesn't like to get into arguments, and I plan on coming at everybody a little more aggressively tonight. This is just my morning mood. Luckily, I've had my breakfast.
It's the afternoon now, so it's your
Yeah.
morning is afternoon.
Yeah, but we've been on here for, well, just over an hour. So it was still before noon when we started. All right, I'm going to wrap
I
it
want to
up.
say just as a summary is, and in my conversations with Jed, he could correct me if he wants to, but my sense is from Jed, his view is all the above. And so I think that's the stance that our community should take. They all do good, right? None of them are bad. They all do good. And some might be better than others, but they all stop people from getting arrested, stop people from getting criminally charged, and expand access.
Well, if Jed would like to come back on here, he's been here before. If he would ever like to come back on here, I'm more than happy to sit here and talk with him about this.
I bet you he's a very busy man right now.
Okay,
Sure, yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
I don't know if everybody remembers this, but when 788 was running, when it was already going on the ballot, we started pushing, what was it, 788 and 780 or 786 and 787.
Yeah,
a constitutional medical and a constitutional rec program. We started pushing those. Green the Vote did at the same time that we were out getting the word out about 788. I don't believe, had we not had those tools to help bring attention to 788, that I don't believe that we would have gotten where we got. We may not have passed it. That while some people in the community, the OGs, turned on some of us. I remember the first video I did, that was the day Frank stopped talking to me. Frank Grove, that was the day he stopped talking to me, was the night I put out a video that I was going to be helping Isaac gather signatures for those two petitions. Because I knew we needed the attention that gathering more signatures would get. I knew that we needed a backup plan that November if the legislators destroyed 788 and everybody completely failed on hanging on to that power that we had at that time, with some mistakes that were made by a few people. But again, I say, had we not had those, I don't think we would have got the attention. So bringing that to today, we have a group out right now gathering signatures, working their butts off. Hell, they're getting like a $500 bonus for working like 3 doubles next week. Plus they make like $25 to $30 an hour. I'm not even sure exactly what it is. It's quite a bit. Again, I've got some friends that are doing it. And they could be out there spreading the word about the ORCA petitions, but they don't even understand the issues because they're just trying to make some money. And no one's come to them and said, hey, let's all be on the same team. So when I'm saying what we're saying, hey, let's all be on the same team. Let's use these to help generate support for the other ones of these. Let's use 820 to gather support for 818 and 819. Let's use 819 and 818 to gather support for 820. And let's make sure we get them all on the ballot. And let's fix this damn mess.
You remember, I think it's the old Superman cartoons from like, decades ago, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. That's what Superman stood for. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
They've taken, I think they've eliminated the American Way part a long time ago. And now everybody's irate because the new Superman, which is actually his son, is coming out gay. So anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's say truth and justice on the cannabis way. Truth.
Okay. All right.
And justice.
I had to throw a little culture war in there.
This movement, this international movement would not have made the progress that it had made if not for truth and justice.
I remember an argument having with some of the OGs a couple years ago who were at that time against full access but understand the need now. I remember arguing with them that that medicine shouldn't stop at the border. This is when I was trying to get we were trying to get the card that anybody could get. Okay. So just a temporary card. We wanted anybody anywhere to be able to get a full 2-year card because medicine doesn't stop at the border. And they were all saying, screw Texas, screw Kansas. They need to pass their own law. We did it. And I would argue with them and say, but we did it because we were watching Colorado. Because so many of us had to go to Colorado on the weekends to get our medicine or buy from somebody who was, or people who moved there with their kids, the cannabis refugees that moved to Colorado. And we're on the news as we led up to 788 going, hey, we just want to come home. We should try and offer that to Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, and anybody else that wants to come here. We should make it available for everybody. All right. You want to say any last words before we wrap it up?
Let's all work together. That's
kind of short.
Truth and justice is the cannabis way.
All right. That'll work. Okay. And again, I'll probably go live again tonight. Sorry, I got terrible cotton mouth. I'll probably go live around 9 o'clock tonight. And if you guys want to argue about stuff, but you don't want to do it online, and you'll only join it for offline, I'm more than happy. We don't have to be online. Okay. It's more important that we have these conversations than that we be online. I just, online helps because the other people who won't have the conversations can still help hear them and start to understand things better. But if you don't want to be on camera on a live, I understand that. You guys decide, we'll do it the way you want. But again, tonight about 9 o'clock, and we should do this on a regular basis. We have so much more to worry about than just cannabis, in my opinion. Our state is in serious trouble. In my opinion, we are headed towards a theocracy. And I also believe that Oklahoma could be the spark that starts the civil war that we don't want. And if we don't derail some of the crazy, that will happen. But we'll get into that tonight. For now, again, as Lauren said, let's all work together. Would you say truth, justice, and the cannabis way? Okay, I'm down with that. All right, guys, that's it. Till next time, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.